Good afternoon. So we are here in regards to an incident that happened at Berea High School this afternoon, rather later on in the morning. At around 11:15, a student at Berea High School brought forth information that they witnessed what looked like a gun in a backpack of one of the students in the classroom. They notified the staff, who then notified the school resource officer very quickly. When that school resource officer went to go make contact and pull that student out of the classroom, that student had wandered out of that classroom and was nowhere to be found. We called in all available school resource officers, deputies in the area, the air support, which you can hear up in the air right now, in an attempt to locate this student. A perimeter was quickly and efficiently set up. Ultimately, upon a search inside of the school, after it was placed on lockdown, we were able to locate that student inside of another classroom that he had previously been in before. That student is a 16-year-old male. We did a secondary search and located a backpack in the same room that student was located in. That backpack contained a BB gun or pellet gun. It was not an actual real gun. When the deputies located that backpack and the gun had been transferred to another student's backpack. Both the initial student and that second student, whose backpack was in possession of the gun, are detained and are facing charges at this time. I understand that the lockdown is about to, if it hasn't already been lifted, has been lifted, and things are getting back to normal.
How was that student allowed out of that classroom when the school resource officer was heading to that classroom? They knew what the potential situation was. How was that student allowed to wander out of the classroom?
My understanding is a student came down to the office to report what the student saw in the classroom, and it was during that period of time in between when the student left seeing the weapon. And so the report was not made to an adult in that classroom. The report was made in the school office. And so in between the time when the student left the room to report what the student saw and when an adult was able to respond, the other student left the room and went somewhere else to hide.
What's the relationship? So the reported student had already wandered off of that classroom before the school resource officer actually got into the classroom.
Yes.
Correct.
What's the relationship, if any, between the two students currently detained?
We don't know. That's still under investigation.
What would those charges look like?
At a minimum, it's going to be school threats. We have learned during the course of this brief investigation that a threat was made for that student to use the gun, maybe not that gun, but another gun towards another student. That's still under investigation, but that's going to be a minimum of that charge.
Any particular form of the threat, spoken word, written?
We don't know.
The second student who was detained, who the gun was found in their backpack, you made it sound like that student placed it in that person's backpack. So why are they facing charges?
Well, we don't know exactly if the initial student placed it or that gun was transferred at that other student's willingness to accept that gun and then place it in. Still under investigation, but both of them are detained right now while investigators sort through it.
I guess I would say from our perspective at about 11:10 today, Berea High School went on a full lockdown. A lot of times you folks ask us what the difference is between a full lockdown and a partial lockdown. A full lockdown is something that we practice for 4 times a year at every single one of our schools as a requirement. Many other school districts would call it an active shooter drill. We call it a full lockdown drill, in which we require our students to get into a safe area of the classroom where they can't be seen from a doorway, and all the doors are locked and nobody leaves the place where they're at. And so this is something that this school and every school in Greenville County trains for at least 4 times a year, and it allows us to contain a situation and prepare for deputies to arrive where we already have a situation in a position where they can come in and begin a search. The school resource officer, who was thankfully already on scene, was able to begin that search along with every administrator in the school. But again, it was the backup resources and the partnership of the quick response of the sheriff's office that allowed us to, within less than an hour and a half, bring this to a successful conclusion. So the other thing that I'd like to say from the principal's perspective is just a huge thank you not only to the sheriff's office but to the teachers and the student body. I know this can be incredibly scary. to parents and students and people inside who don't have all the information, as students text each other, as rumors spread, as sometimes what is good information gets out, sometimes bad information. There is always the opportunity for people to not follow protocol, to act out on their own, or to be traumatized or respond in a way that isn't appropriate. So we're thankful that everybody inside the school followed instructions, listened to their teachers, but mostly we're thankful to the student who came forward, because you've heard me say this before, I'll say it again, we preach, if you see something, say something. And so this is an opportunity where a student saw something in a backpack that she knew was a problem. And while at the time she didn't know if it was a BB gun or a real gun, the student knew that it was a problem and quickly reported that to a trusted adult, which is what we ask students at every age to do. In this case, at the high school, but we've talked before that even at elementary school now, we're seeing situations where people are bringing BB guns to school, and they look very real. They feel very real. I mean, as Ryan will tell you, these are heavy. They can appear to be real weapons, and that causes the same sort of anxiety among classmates and disruption. That's the other big thing that I'd like to point out as a frustration from a school district. When these sorts of things are brought in, a disruption is caused. There were end of course exams going on for all senior students today, and so there was a major disruption to the school day based on a student bringing a BB gun to school, and courses having to be ended, tests having to be potentially redone for hundreds of students potentially. So while the investigation is still ongoing as to the motives and intentions of this student, even if it was simply just bringing something to school, it has caused a major disruption to classmates and to administrators, an entire student body, angst to parents and to fellow students. And there is never a circumstance where it's appropriate to bring a weapon to school. And so this student, the one who brought the weapon, has been suspended and recommended for expulsion. And if it turns out, as law enforcement said, that a second student willingly accepted the weapon in an attempt to hide it or protect a friend or someone else, that student will also be suspended and recommended for expulsion.
And the person who brought the gun, the student who brought the gun, just to be clear, it was about him and somebody else. It wasn't like he had plans to do some sort of mass.
That's all still under investigation right now. Preliminary reports indicate that he intended to use that weapon against another student. That's all we have right now. It's still a little too early to tell and determine for sure, but still an investigation.
And those tests that they were taking, will they get to redo them?
Yeah. Schools, unfortunately, are used to either students getting sick or a fire alarm being pulled in the middle of a test. It's not the first time that there's been a disruption to testing. We do have a small window of time, according to the state, in which to get these tests done. Obviously, it is not an ideal scenario for students who started these exams to either have to finish or begin again, for these to be rescheduled. You have to imagine, as you think about their feelings, they were probably a lot more calm going into that test this morning than they might be having to restart it again. This is not a scenario that you would ever want students who are trying to get credit for a class on important state testing to have had to endure something like a lockdown and what felt like a very serious threat. So I'm not sure what allowances could be made, but the tests will need to be finished and they will have to be made up, but certainly the circumstances are not ideal.
And the way you described a full lockdown, you're telling me that the students probably more than likely were under their desk, hunkered down the whole time? Is that in a safe spot in the classroom? Does that just mean out
of vision from the door?
So as a policy, no matter if you bring a gun to school, is that the policy that you go into full lockdown? No matter what, if there is a report that a gun is in school, do you go into full lockdown? Or has there ever been a report that there's a gun in school and you go into partial lockdown? That's what I'm just trying to figure out.
Yeah.
If you get a report, no matter what, do you go into full lockdown?
Again, that is I don't know that I could give a blanket statement on one versus the other. If you want to remember earlier in the year, there have been a circumstance where it was coming off of a school bus that the report was made, and students were stopped before they actually got into the school building or right as they came in. So it depends on the circumstance, but certainly in a case like this one, where it happens in the middle of the day, it's reported during a class period, at the time you believe you know the location of the student, absolutely a full lockdown is what you would do, because a partial allows people to move throughout the building. It allows classes to continue as normal. We just don't allow anyone inside or outside. A partial lockdown is typically, the sheriff's office recommends that to us if they're looking for a suspect externally, or if we believe that there could be a threat trying to get inside the school, somebody who's maybe made a threat against a teacher or somebody in the building, and we want to make sure we keep everybody out, and we don't let we don't want to let anybody in, and we keep students inside. We don't let them out to recess, but classes move about as normal. Just the external doors stay locked and we don't let anyone in. In this case, when you believe the threat is internal, the report has been made that a gun was seen, in this case thankfully a BB gun, but a gun was seen in a bag. The smartest move is to go on a full lockdown where you close those doors and don't allow people to move freely within the building.
There seems to be a lot of people outside the building right now. Can you speak, what message was sent, if any, to parents or to loved ones as this information unfolded?
The principal has sent home 2 messages now in the course of an hour and a half. The initial one asked parents to do what we always ask them to do, which is a difficult request, which is to stay home. And I know that is a hard thing to do as a parent. Everybody wants to immediately come and see for themselves. People want to call the front office. The advice we always give to parents that came from the principal in this case is to stay home. We know students have phones and can contact their parents. We know that the students are sometimes seeking information from their parents even. It is a difficult ask, but we have law enforcement here who is trained to deal with these situations. We have school administrators, resource officers, and district security specialists who respond to the scene of these, that help perform the lockdown, keep the school safe inside. And the more those resources are diverted to handle parents who may be upset or parents who may be trying to get into the school, when you are looking for someone, the more people that crowd the situation, the more difficult it becomes to handle the situation, and you distract the resources that are needed in the moment.
Any message to parents right now who might be watching, just wanting to know if their kids are okay, if they're safe?
Yeah, the situation is safe. Fortunately, and you look at any incident that happened throughout this school year in the Greenville County School District, we have one SRO, sometimes 2 at the max, at a school. We rely heavily on the student body, the staff, the administration, and each and every instance they acted so swiftly and notified the proper authorities who then notified us. These situations can be catastrophic, and in every instance we were able to get things secure, get a perimeter set up, and then diffuse the situation as quickly and efficiently as possible. And so we are very, very grateful to the actions of not just the students, but also the staff and administration of all the schools within Greenville County. And so with that being said, yes, we were able to get the resources there quickly and get the situation rendered safe. And again, school is being resumed as normal. So yes, it was an incident that was unfortunate, but everyone's safe now.
How much time do you think it was between the initial report of that other student and actually locating the student in the classroom?
I would say within an hour.
And then earlier, towards the beginning, you mentioned it, based on that threat of violence from one student to the other, it wasn't entirely clear whether that BB gun was attributed to be the weapon of choice for that act.
Yeah, that's correct. We don't know that yet.
Does that mean there's potential for another weapon in the school, or is that being looked at?
We've done multiple searches, and that's kind of what was taking a little longer for us to get out here and get you this information, is they were just making sure that they have searched every cranny and crevice that possibly existed to make sure that there was no other, they had dogs there, just to make sure that they didn't miss anything. So at completion of that search, they located one BB gun. They rendered everything safe enough to let the students back in the classroom, so we do not anticipate locating a firearm.
Was this gun
And
related?
let me really quickly let me add to that too, because I think there is always angst from parents then once something like this happens. As Ryan mentioned, the student has been charged. criminally, and in our case the student has been suspended and recommended for expulsion. So for the parents who are asking, okay, so it was just a pellet gun but yet you say there was a threat, is the student going to reappear on my son or daughter's campus? And the answer to that is no. Sorry, Ben.
No,
Yeah. Okay.
Any lessons learned from this particular instance? You said everything kind of happened as it should. Anything the deputies saw for the first time, or anything unique that will be used in the future to respond to situations?
No, you know, we always ask, like Beth said, is for the parents to please abide by the rules and instructions that the principal or the administration gives out. For parents just to let deputies render that situation safe before moving forward. And I don't know the situation, I haven't been told otherwise, but to give you an example, instead of a student coming up and rushing to school, they saw us out here and inquired on what's going on, because
Yeah, the parents, yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They were abiding by that rule, and so that speaks volumes to the cooperation that I think that, you know, this day and age where we're seeing more and more incidents happenings within the schools, parents are learning that we can act best whenever we have the resources allocated accordingly.
And I would say too that there's a reason that we brought you folks here and not over there. That was a safety concern on our end as well. You know, Ryan saying we need to have people here. That's the same reason that we would ask parents to stay away, is that we didn't know an hour and a half ago if that student was somewhere in the area, still on campus. And again, if you've got parents coming and being in the midst of things, that hinders potential search efforts. It requires deputies to be part of crowd control as opposed to looking for the suspect. But yeah, it is a safety issue for parents as well, that we would not want them to come on to a scene that is not yet secured. And I know it is difficult. Ryan and I are both parents. We know how difficult it is to trust once something like this is going on inside your child's school. But it is something that every principal and every teacher and every student trains for. And
as does the sheriff's office.
Yeah.
You know, these shooting incidents are unfortunate for obvious reasons. But if there's any plus, it's that it has put officer and deputy training for these types of situations at the forefront. We train yearly. Our special operations units, they train weekly on these types of situations, and as you can see, they got it out here. They established a perimeter. We had air support up, and just in a matter of minutes. And so I assure the community, we assure the parents that we're doing everything we can along with the school district to ensure the safety and security of the students, staff, and everyone within the school district.
We thought y'all were just
again
being...
to parents that the lockdown has been lifted.
the lockdown
classes
is
being
lifted.
resumed?
Yep, classes have already resumed. Yeah. You know, the other thing I would say too is you talk about lessons learned. You know, we always debrief after these incidents with the sheriff's office, with school administrators, and the folks at our district office as we unfortunately plan/prepare for what could be a future incident. So we take each and every one of these as a learning opportunity. We talk to the sheriff's office, we talk to the school principal, we talk to administrators and try to find out what happened, how do we respond, what worked, and is there anything we could do differently next time. So yeah, just to wrap it up, a huge thank you to the Sheriff's Office again for their quick response. We're so thankful to have school resource officers on campus, trained and armed and there and ready to handle incidents like this. That allows the folks on our staff to feel safer and feel better, but we train for this, and the response was incredibly quick again today, and a situation that, as Ryan mentioned, could have been catastrophic was handled quickly and probably not quietly, considering there was some severe disruption to some tests and some other things. But the principal is thankful, and school is back to normal.